Good morning and welcome to Principles of Micro with James Bland. Today we're going to learn about producer surplus. Okay, so remembering back to when we learned about the supply curve, remember that one of the interpretations we had of the height of the supply curve, right, so here we've got just a supply curve here, is that if we pick a quantity, the height of the supply curve gives us the marginal cost of producing that particular item. Okay, so if we think about this, at this point on the supply curve, there is a seller who has who's thinking about, I have a marginal cost, say, equal to $5, which would be this point here as well. Okay, and if price is greater than or equal to $5, I want to sell my item. And if price is less than $5, I want to not sell. Okay, so suppose that I am the seller, or you are the seller at this particular point on the supply curve, but the price was actually $7. Okay, so here's my marginal cost, and here's how much I can sell stuff at. Okay, so I produced something for $5, which I managed to sell for $7. Which means I am $2 better off than had I not sold that item. Okay, and so this is the benefit that this particular seller gets from selling that item. Okay, and so we're going to work out how we can add this up for all of the sellers in the market to get at this thing called producer surplus. Okay, and producer surplus is going to have a very similar interpretation to consumer surplus, where consumer surplus measures the total benefits that consumers get from participating in the market, and producer surplus is going to measure the total benefits that, or the net benefits that sellers get from participating in a market. Okay, and to begin our introduction into this, I'm going to be looking at Mankiw Chapter 7, so this is Mankiw's Principles of Microeconomics, Chapter 7, Table 2, which gives us a very simple supply schedule with 4 sellers, each who can sell one item. Okay, so this is going to look very similar to our demand application before. So we have 4 sellers: Mary, Frida, Georgia, and Grandma. And these sellers have costs of producing and selling one item of $900, $800, $600, and $500. Okay, so what we're going to do is to work out the supply curve associated with these sellers. And so again, with this simple example, we're just going to assume that these sellers are going to sell either 0 or 1 item each. You can think about this as each one of these people owns 1 item. Suppose they're selling an old laptop or something like that. And they're either going to sell it or hang on to it and use it themselves. And these are the costs of giving it up. You could think about these as their opportunity costs of selling them, which you can think about, well, if they're not going to sell them, they get to keep them and use them at home for something else. Okay, so let's start working out our supply curve for this supply schedule. Here's quantity, here's price. Now the thing to note about this supply schedule is that there are 4 sellers, each who can sell at most 1 item. Okay, so from here we know that, well, the interesting parts of the horizontal axis are going to be at quantities 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and the interesting prices here are going to be at, and I won't draw this to scale, but it'll be close, we'll be at 900, 800, 600, and 500. Okay, so let's work out how much of things are being sold at each of these prices. Let's go into a different color here so you can see what I'm annotating, if OneNote will allow. Here we go. Okay, so at a price of something above $900, everyone is going to want to sell their item. Okay, so how many people would sell their item if the price was above $900? Well, we've got Mary. Well, she would want to sell hers. Frida, that looks good. Georgia, that looks good. Grandma, looks good too. So at a price above $900, all 4 of them would be selling their item. Okay, so essentially at this point the supply curve is vertical because we've just run out of sellers at that point. Okay, what about at a price below 500? Okay, at a price below 500, no one is going to want to sell their item because their cost is above $500. Okay, so nobody wants to sell at a price of $500 or below, well, at strictly below $500. So this means the supply curve is on the vertical axis at prices below $500. So our supply curve is along here. Okay, but what about a price of $500? Right, well, at a price of $500, Grandma doesn't really care if she sells or doesn't sell. Okay, so at a price of $500, we could either get a quantity of 0 or a quantity supplied of 1. Okay, so I can join the dots like this. And then, as the price gets a little bit above $500, Grandma definitely wants to sell, but Georgia isn't interested until the price gets up to $600. And so when the price is $600, we could either get 1 item being sold, that would be Grandma, or 2, right, this would be Grandma and Georgia. Then at a price of $600, Georgia is definitely going to sell, or at least is in, well, above $600, Georgia is definitely going to sell, but until we get to $800, we're still going to have a quantity of 2. And then at a price of $800, Frida is now indifferent between selling and not selling. And so we get another horizontal line here, right? At a price of $800, either Frida sells, no, sorry, Frida does not sell, or Frida sells. Okay. And then, as the price goes above $800, Frida will definitely sell, right? If the price is above $800, she's definitely better off from selling than not selling. Okay, so here we have a price between $800 and $900. We're going to get a quantity of 3. And then, once we get to a price of $900, Mary is now indifferent between selling and not, so we could get, at a price of $900, either a quantity of 3, where Grandma, Georgia, and Frida sell, or all 4 of them sell, in which case we're back to this point here. Okay, and as I said before, at a price above $900, everyone is going to sell their item. Okay, so here's our supply curve for these 4 people, each wanting to sell 1 item. I'm running out of time at this point on my Screencast-O-Matic, so I'm going to pause it here, and I'll put you into another video right after this. I'll post a link at the end of this one. Thanks.